Is that vitamin D supplement that you have heard it's great to take, especially during the winter and especially to boost your immune system? Is that vitamin D supplement actually doing more harm than good? That's the question that I want to dig into today. And if you're watching this video, the title might have piqued your interest. I totally get it. It's something that we've always just heard is a great thing to do, and that vitamin D levels can really dictate how resilient we are and to really help our immune systems to work better. I really want to dig into this topic because I've got some great information to share with you so that you can make that decision for yourself. So let's get right to it. So, first off, a few helpful facts when it comes to vitamin D, which is really a hormone. You might have heard that before. It's a fat-soluble hormone rather than a vitamin. So vitamin D, hormone D, we're going to say they're sort of the same things, right? But there's two forms. Let's start off with that. There are two forms. There's vitamin D2, which is present in plant foods and some conventional foods like dairy, OJ, cereals, processed foods, things such as that. And then there's also D3, which is present in animal foods. And it's the latter that is way more easily absorbed. So there's two different forms. That's a fact for you. Also, most of the vitamin D you've probably heard we can get from the sun, right? That's definitely a true fact, but we can also get it from our food. So let's go back to the sun really quick. Anytime the sun hits our skin, cholesterol and hormone or vitamin D is produced. And this form of vitamin D is actually transported in the blood by a protein called vitamin D binding protein. And it's transported to the liver where it's kind of converted or sulfated, I guess you could say, to the storage form of vitamin D. And then that form is transported to the kidneys by this binding protein, where it's then converted to the active form of vitamin D. So that goes to show you right there that vitamin D doesn't control vitamin D, right? It needs other things to be able to work properly. That's a really important thing. But what else controls vitamin D status? The parathyroid gland does, also by regulating mineral and pH status in the blood. So if we become too stressed, the parathyroid gland will release the parathyroid hormone, and its primary goal is to neutralize the pH of the blood by promoting the activation of D3 in the kidneys to boost calcium absorption from food in the small intestine. And I don't want to get too deep into these things, but I want you to realize what's going on when you take some of these. Obviously we're going to focus on vitamin D today, but a lot of times when you're supplementing with these different things, a lot more is going on rather than just raising that level, right? It's all connected. So I hope to be able to show you that today with this, focus on vitamin D in this video. So let's go into the question, why are so many people deficient in vitamin D? So before this question is asked, we really should say, what factors in your life are leading to this deficiency rather than just why are people deficient, right? And because there are so many people that are deficient in vitamin D if you go by the blood test. We'll get to that in a minute. But recommendations for high dose of vitamin D are being made when the goal should be to get the right variables that influence the production, right? As I mentioned, vitamin D does not regulate vitamin D by itself, right? It has to have other factors and cofactors. So let's look at the 5 most common reasons for hormone D or vitamin D deficiencies. Number 1 is low-fat diets / not eating enough proteins, or kind of a variety of proteins. So we've kind of been all conditioned to believe that saturated fats are bad. And so we've kind of steered clear of them or consumed low fat products. And some of this has kind of shifted, but nonetheless, whenever we eat in this low fat way, and we even replace healthy fats with oils from plants or seeds, which the problem with that is they're completely void of something called retinol, which is active form of vitamin A. And we'll kind of get to how that plays into all of this. But quality animal proteins from a variety of sources like muscle, fatty fish, organ meats, dairy contain this retinol, which is the active form of vitamin A. And retinol is essential for activation of the D receptor, remember? you have to have this binding going on. And so that's what activates it. Reason number 2, lack of sun. This is sort of like we've heard this. So we as humans don't really get outside enough. We sit inside, we work. It's just something that we've sort of got out of the rhythm of doing, is going outside. And so the sun allows us to produce the things that are really needed to be able to regulate and to help the vitamin D that we even have in stores and such work properly. So we definitely have this lack of sun going on. That's sort of another reason why a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D or hormone D. Reason number 3 would be magnesium deficiency. So this is a really interesting thing, and I want you to really understand how this works. So magnesium is required for every step of the hormone or vitamin D conversion. So there's actually 3 metabolic transactions that kind of go on in this process. So there is under the skin, there's in the liver, and then there's in the kidney. And that's really how vitamin D works in our body, is really from all of these things working together. And so here's where it gets fascinating. All of the transactions that can only happen when magnesium is present in proper amount. So really, the vitamin D can't do what it needs to do to work in our body if it doesn't have magnesium, because all of those transactions, or those actions really, are kind of dependent on having magnesium in proper amounts. What depletes magnesium? Stress. So in response, the body will purposely lower storage of vitamin D levels when there is not enough magnesium that is needed to convert the storage form into the active form. So the same is true when there's too much calcium in the blood. So the calcium and magnesium need to be in balance, and your body knows that. So the body does this as a safety mechanism to prevent calcification of the tissues. It's a really, really important point, and a really basic sort of action that I want you to understand, because that is key. Calcium, you want it in your bone, not in your blood. So that all of these things play a role with each other, and they're all connected. Really big point there. So reason number 4, moving on, of why a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. GMO foods and glyphosate can chelate copper and zinc, which are required to activate vitamin D. And so, also that kind of goes along with this, not to get too far into like the science of it, but glyphosate disrupts the liver and the cytochrome P450 pathway, which is what metabolizes a lot of different things that we take in, which is responsible for activating the stored vitamin D in the liver and kidneys. So you can see how all of these different reasons really disrupt the vitamin D from working properly in your body. But the last reason, just moving on, I know I could stay and kind of dig into this, but hopefully you're getting a good overview here. The last reason is that cholesterol lowering drugs and supplements will lower cholesterol. So why does that matter? Less cholesterol decreases the body's ability to make vitamin D. So since statins reduce cholesterol levels, they interfere with the formation of vitamin D and cause even more vitamin D deficiency. So you can see these things all work together, but those are some of the main reasons why a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. So what about supplementing? Is it good? Is it safe to supplement with vitamin D? So based on what I shared, I hope you can see that a vast majority of the time that supplemental vitamin D is really not necessary, and it can actually do more harm than good because it blocks energy production and it perpetuates inflammation, which we are trying to decrease. One of the biggest problems is that even a small to moderate dose of vitamin D, which most people are taking like a mega dose, reduces the vitamin A, stores in your liver, and it lowers the level of vitamin A in your blood. Vitamin A is something that is needed for so many different processes to really make the things that we have in our body work properly, for kind of a simplified version and explanation of that. And this becomes a huge problem because now we can't activate vitamin D, that binding receptor that I mentioned is needed. But more importantly, without retinol, you cannot regulate thyroid hormones. So there's just a lot going on here, but I hope you can see how whenever you take the doses of vitamin D in like a supplemental form, it reduces the vitamin A stores, which are needed for a lot of different processes in your body. So vitamin A also is required for helping copper to work properly and helping iron to work properly, because iron and copper both need ceruloplasmin, which is kind of the transport protein that keeps it moving safely throughout the body, and so that it is able to work, which is obviously a whole nother conversation. But I did do a previous video on that, so you can look back through my channel, and I will actually put that video link below in the description for you. But moving on, lastly, hormone D or vitamin D supplements will decrease or deplete renal potassium. So why does this matter? Anytime you lose the ability to regulate water inside the cell, you make the cell more susceptible to taking in calcium and iron, which leads to more inflammation, including calcification and kidney stones. Because again, you want calcium in your bones. You do not want it outside. You don't want it outside of that. You don't want it in the blood, right? Or in the cells. So you want it in your bones. And so this is something that it's a delicate balance here. When things get off, it can really get out of hand fast. So interestingly, cholesterol plays a part in this as well. So as Americans, we have the highest level of cholesterol / inflammation and the lowest level of vitamin D on the planet. Interesting. Yet, it seems like everyone is supplementing with vitamin D, correct? And at obscene dosages, like really, really, really high. So here's what happens. So during inflammation, the body will naturally lower vitamin D storage, right? And that is what is being tested when you do a blood test and you say, oh, your vitamin D level's low. It's actually the storage of vitamin D that's being tested, not the active vitamin D that's in your body. So during inflammation, let me go back, the body will naturally lower the storage of vitamin D, producing more active vitamin D to boost the immune system. So why take something to reduce inflammation when you can change and remove the things that are causing inflammation in the first place? Again, we're going upstream here, right? There's always band-aids that can be placed at any level throughout our health. So just to keep going for sake of time here. So another thing is excess vitamin D supplementation and chronic stress will increase the magnesium burn rate. It just increases the rate at which your body burns through magnesium. And I already mentioned that we need magnesium so that vitamin D can work correctly. So all of these things are really, really interesting, right? So kind of brings along the question, how do I get enough vitamin D then? And I hope you have a new perspective on how managing our health really involves more than just taking a supplement. And it really involves more of knowing where your levels are as far as your minerals go, so that you can make sure that things are in proportion and that your body is not just so deficient in one and burning through another. And there's just, it's a delicate balance and everything affects everything. So this also highlights how doing so can perpetuate underlying inflammation and metabolic imbalances. And I would also add mineral imbalances to that too. So hormone / vitamin D cannot regulate itself, just like iron doesn't regulate itself and other things in the body. They need partner proteins. They need other things to help them work properly. So optimal levels of vitamin D come from getting outside, not overusing sunscreens, your magnesium status, your diet, and reducing inflammation. So what can you do? You can kind of already pull some of the things that I mentioned about why we're deficient, right? So eliminating the use of GMO foods like that glyphosate can really affect how all of this works together. The sunscreens definitely are a part of this. Foods that contain synthetic vitamin D. A lot of dairy products have it, soy products, most cereals, pasteurized OJ, juices, things like that. Eat foods that contain vitamin A. Other vitamins also are usually included in there, like D, E, K. And these will be things like meats, really quality meats, raw or cultured dairy, salmon, sardines, eggs, liver, different types of organ meat. So, but the thing is, with the vitamin A specifically, and also D in our foods, a lot of times we don't consume a lot of these things. And even dairy has been labeled bad in the past, and that might be a great other conversation to have on one of these videos. But it's just interesting how all this plays together and how you can see the evolution of being inside more and not eating as many of these foods has really not served us well. But basically, get outside more is we know that, but yet these other things can play into all of this as well. And getting outside doesn't have to be for a super long time, but when you do, take your sunglasses off, expose your eyes and face and neck to the sunlight. Also, eating magnesium-rich foods, utilizing like a magnesium lotion or magnesium flakes in baths, and possibly a magnesium supplement, but you have to make sure that other macro minerals are balanced first, or else it will stress your adrenals out and make things a little bit worse. It might make you feel worse rather than better. And just remember, vitamin D storage will naturally lower to boost active vitamin D to support your immune system. So focus on that and not really how to supplement your low vitamin D. So this was kind of maybe a little bit longer of a video, but I really wanted to give you a good big picture on how everything affects everything, right? I didn't get into all of that, but I hope you can see how. And maybe just try to see what other things you can do to help with your vitamin D levels, because obviously it is important to our overall health, right? But just throwing in a supplement might not be the best thing for you to do. So I hope you've enjoyed this information today. I always like to bring you new and interesting information, maybe just in a different light, so that you can begin to see the bigger picture and see how everything works together. So if you like this type of information, make sure to subscribe to my channel, because I put a new video out every Wednesday. And if you have a specific question or topic that you'd love for me to dig into, please feel free to email me. My email is in the description, or get in contact with me, however, through some of the social channels that I love to show up on, Instagram being the main one. And actually, if you love, kind of seeing the bigger picture of everything, I recorded a video training just for you. You're going to love this. So I have the link for you in the description, and it's absolutely free. You get instant access. So check that out. Let me know what you think. I love to just have conversations with you guys about these things. So you can get in touch with me on any of my social media channels, or also my email is in the description of this video, and I can't wait to connect with you soon. See you on the next video.